They sold the fat daughter like cattle, until the alpha vampire said, "She's priceless." Lanterns swung from crooked poles, casting uneven light over cages and chains. The people who had gathered here were not here for food or cloth. They were here for children, sold like cattle, their futures weighed in coins. Isolde stood in a narrow pen, her hands trembling at her sides. She was aware of every eye on her, every whisper, every cruel chuckle. At 17, she was tall and strong, but the world had always found reasons to mock her for her size. She had grown used to whispers behind her back, to fingers pointing and laughter following her footsteps, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her father had sold her here, saying it was the only way to pay off a debt he could not repay. Her mother's tears had been silent, too exhausted to fight, and so here she was, standing on rough wooden planks, waiting for strangers to decide her worth. The auctioneer, a gaunt man with a voice like gravel, called her forward. Next, the fat daughter. Sturdy and strong, perfect for labor or protection. "Who will give me a coin for this prize?" The crowd murmured, some laughing, some whispering to one another. A few nobles in embroidered coats stepped forward, inspecting her like she were a slab of meat. One man with a twisted smirk leaned close. "She's worth barely half the price of a horse," he sneered. Isolde felt her cheeks burn. She wanted to shrink into the floor, to vanish entirely, but she held herself upright. She did not know why, only that something inside her refused to be broken here, not today. Then, as if drawn by some invisible force, the crowd went silent. A figure moved at the edge of the square, tall and impossibly pale, dressed in dark velvet that shimmered under the lantern light. Every whisper stopped. Every gaze turned toward him. Cale. Even in a crowd of the desperate and cruel, he commanded attention. His hair was black as midnight, his eyes a strange shade of red that seemed to pierce through shadow and flesh alike. His presence alone was a warning, a promise, and a curiosity all at once. The auctioneer's voice faltered. "Ah, and we have a special guest, it seems," he said, trying to mask his fear. Cale's gaze fell on Isolde. The world shrank until she was all he could see. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and the air seemed to chill where he walked. No one dared interrupt, no one dared speak. "She is priceless," Cale said softly, almost to himself, yet loud enough that the words carried across the market. The crowd erupted. Laughter, shouts, confusion. "What does he mean, priceless? You can't just—" Cale ignored them. He stepped into the pen, his gaze fixed on Isolde. There was no judgment in his eyes, no mockery, only a calm, piercing intensity. "I will take her," he said. "Wait, that's not how," the auctioneer stammered, but Cale's voice, quiet but certain, cut through every word. "She is not for sale in your terms, she is not a prize, she is hers in her own right." A murmur of fear passed through the crowd. Some of the buyers stepped back. Even the guards hesitated. No one had ever spoken like this in the market before. Cale extended a hand to Isolde. She stared at him, unsure whether to flee or trust. Something in the way he looked at her, like he saw all her fears and yet valued her anyway, made her chest tighten. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, protective, not possessive. As he lifted her out of the pen, she felt the weight of the crowd's stares, their disbelief and envy, but she also felt a strange lightness, as if a shadow had been lifted from her shoulders. She did not know this man, yet she did not feel afraid. The streets outside the market were narrow and fog-laden. The lanterns barely pierced the mist, making the city look like a maze of shadows. Cale walked beside her, not speaking, letting her adjust to the sudden escape from the nightmare of the auction. "Why me?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale's eyes flickered with something she could not name. "Because you are not like the others. You carry something within you, something they cannot see, but I can. Do you know who you are, Isolde?" She shook her head. "I am just me, sold like a common thing, nothing more." "No," Cale said firmly. "You are more, much more, and one day you will see it too." They arrived at a massive mansion looming against the crimson sky. Towers of black stone and windows that glowed with a strange, inner light gave the building an otherworldly presence. The doors opened silently at Cale's touch, and the shadows inside seemed to move as though alive. Inside, the air was cooler, scented with old wood, stone, and something faintly metallic. Candles flickered along the walls, and strange tapestries depicted scenes of power, magic, and battles that seemed impossibly old. Cale led her through halls lined with towering shelves filled with books that whispered secrets of 1,000 years. "This is your home for now," he said, his voice echoing slightly. "You will be safe here, and in time, you will learn why you were never meant to be ordinary." Isolde wandered through the hall, touching the spines of books, feeling the weight of history. She had always been invisible in the world outside, overlooked, mocked, discarded. But here, she felt as though someone finally believed she mattered. Cale watched her from a distance, patient, silent. There was a depth to him that both frightened and fascinated her. She could sense his power in every step, every gesture, yet he did not demand anything from her. He simply was, and she could not help but notice him, again and again. Later, as the night deepened, Cale offered her a simple meal. They ate in a room lined with windows, where the city lights below glimmered like fallen stars. He spoke of little of the city, of the shadows, of creatures that walked in darkness, and she listened, her curiosity growing. "Why do you help me?" she asked, unable to contain herself. "Because someone must see the worth in what the world discards," Cale said. "And because sometimes the strongest light comes from the place the world thinks is dark." Isolde felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that her life could change, that she could be more than what her family, what the market, had made her think she was. As she was led to a room to rest, she felt the first faint brush of unease. The mansion was not entirely empty. Shadows moved where they should not, whispers curled along the walls, faint and unreadable. Cale had mentioned threats before, creatures that watched, waiting for weakness. She could not see them, but she could feel them. Yet, despite the fear, she felt a thrill. For the first time in her life, someone powerful had chosen her, not for what she could give, but for who she was. And that choice, that alone made her feel alive. She lay on a bed of dark velvet, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the market, of the faces, of her family, of the strangers who had called her worthless. And yet, one thought stayed with her, steady and strange. "I am not worthless." Outside, Cale stood at a balcony looking over the city. The fog swirled, and a chill wind carried faint echoes of the market. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched. He sensed the danger before it approached, and he knew the game had only just begun. "Nothing will touch you tonight," he murmured to the wind, and perhaps in a way to her as well. "Not yet, but the world will test you, and I will be here when it does." The red moon hung high, casting long, twisted shadows across the walls of the mansion. Isolde slept, uneasy yet safe, dreaming of a life she had never dared imagine. Cale remained awake, silent and vigilant, aware that someone, or something, was already moving against them. The night outside was alive with whispers, with plots, with secrets older than the city itself. But inside, in the heart of the dark mansion, two lives had begun a journey neither could yet understand. One of power, one of courage, and one of a connection that would change everything. And somewhere in the fog, a figure watched the mansion from the shadows, speaking into the night. No one escapes the debts of their blood. The morning light filtered through tall, arched windows, casting long, pale beams across the dark stone floors of the mansion. Isolde awoke slowly, her thoughts still tangled with the events of the previous night. The market, her father, Cale, the strange, impossible words he had spoken, priceless. "You are more than what the world thinks." She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake the lingering fear and wonder. The mansion was quiet now, but the silence carried a weight of its own, like it was listening. Every shadow seemed to move slightly when she turned her head. Every whisper of wind felt like it was carrying messages meant only for her. Kale did not appear immediately. She had expected him to be nearby, watching, as he had in the market. But perhaps he gave her this small measure of freedom, freedom in a world that had never allowed her any. As she explored the halls, she discovered doorways leading to libraries, galleries, and rooms filled with artifacts she could not name. Candles flickered along the walls, their light reflecting off polished stone floors, making the mansion feel alive. She reached out to touch one of the tapestries and felt a strange warmth under her fingers. The figures woven into the cloth seemed to move, their eyes glimmering as though they were aware of her presence. "Curious," a voice said from the shadows. She turned sharply. Kale was standing there, his eyes watching her, calm and unreadable. I'm sorry," she stammered, stepping back. "I was just looking." "You are free to look," he said, his voice low but firm. "It is how you learn. Observation is the first step toward understanding." Isolde nodded slowly. She was learning quickly that Kale's rules were not the kind of rules she had known in the human world. There were expectations here, yes, but they were more about respect, about awareness, about discovering what one was capable of, rather than obedience or fear. Kale led her to a room at the back of the mansion, lined with mirrors and polished stone. The sunlight from the high windows reflected in strange patterns across the walls, giving the room an ethereal glow. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a stone bench. He placed a small, intricately carved box on the bench beside her. "This is for you. It contains tools to help you understand yourself and your power." Isolde hesitated. "My power," Kale nodded. "You carry a gift that has been dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. You may not understand it yet, but I can see it. It is rare, and it is dangerous if ignored." She opened the box cautiously. Inside were small stones etched with runes, a thin silver chain with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon, and a folded piece of parchment covered in unfamiliar symbols. Her fingers trembled as she touched them. The warmth of the stones was immediate, almost alive, and she felt a strange hum in her chest, like a pulse matching her own heartbeat. Kale observed her silently. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "And your body, your size, it is not a weakness. It is part of your strength. The world does not see it, but I do. You will learn to see it too." Isolde swallowed hard. For so long she had been taught to hide, to shrink herself, to believe that her body made her less than others. And now this man, terrifying and magnificent, told her something entirely different. "Why me?" she asked again softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Because you are one of the few who can survive what is coming," Kale said. His eyes darkened slightly, as though he were remembering something he had long tried to forget. "And because I have never seen anyone like you before. You have the courage to face fear, even when you do not understand it yet. That is rare." Isolde felt a mixture of pride and fear. She did not fully understand what Kale meant, but the idea that she might be more than worthless, that she might have purpose, was intoxicating. For the next hours, Kale guided her through small lessons. They practiced movements, ways to step quietly, to observe without being seen, to sense when danger approached. Isolde discovered that her size allowed her balance and strength others lacked. Even a small push or step could unbalance an opponent much larger than her. Between lessons, they spoke quietly, cautiously. Kale revealed fragments of his past, a history of battles, betrayals, and enemies who had once sought to destroy him. He spoke with restraint, never revealing too much but enough to hint at a world of danger lurking beyond the mansion walls. "Why do you stay here?" Isolde asked during a quiet pause, her voice barely above the hum of the wind outside. Kale's gaze met hers. "Because this world is not safe for anyone," he said, "and because I promised to protect something worth saving. Sometimes that is a person, sometimes it is an idea." Isolde felt a flutter of warmth at his words, though she could not name it. She was not used to being considered worth protecting. She had been invisible for most of her life, overlooked or ridiculed. And now here she was, standing beside a man whose power could crush her with a thought, and yet he treated her with care, as if she mattered in a way the world had never allowed. As the day turned to evening, the mansion grew colder. The shadows lengthened, and the flickering candlelight made every corner seem alive. Kale walked her to a balcony that overlooked the city. The streets below were slick with rain, lanterns reflecting off wet cobblestones, and the fog rolled in thick waves. "Do you see the city?" Kale asked, his voice low. "It is beautiful in its decay, but it is dangerous. There are those who would harm you simply because they think they can. You must be prepared." Isolde nodded. I will try." "You will do more than try," Kale said. "You will learn, and you will surprise yourself." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the city. The wind carried faint whispers from the streets below, and Isolde felt a shiver run down her spine. Danger was real, yes, but so was this strange, new possibility, this life she had never dared imagine. Later, as she prepared to rest, Kale handed her the silver crescent pendant from the box. "This will help you focus your energy," he said. "Wear it always. It will remind you of your worth and of what you are capable of." Isolde touched the pendant, feeling its cold metal warm slightly in her hands. She fastened it around her neck, feeling a strange sense of comfort and courage settle over her. That night, sleep came fitfully. Dreams of the market, of chains and jeers, haunted her. But they were mixed with visions of Kale's eyes, calm and strong, and the warmth of the mansion's candlelight. In her dreams, she felt herself running, strong and confident, no longer afraid of those who had mocked or sold her. A sudden sound woke her before dawn, a soft, almost imperceptible scratching at her door. She froze, heart pounding. The mansion was quiet, but the sound persisted. Footsteps or something else, she could not tell. Kale appeared as if from the shadows, silent as the night itself. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Do not fear," he said. "I am here. Nothing will harm you while I stand." He moved toward the door, his presence like a shield, and Isolde felt an unfamiliar confidence. She followed, her heart steadying as he opened the door to reveal nothing. The corridor was empty, the shadows undisturbed. "Perhaps it is nothing," Kale said, his voice calm, but his eyes scanned the darkness. "Or perhaps it is someone testing us. Either way, you are ready for more than you think, but you must trust yourself and me." Isolde nodded. "I will try." Kale studied her for a long moment, then gestured toward the window. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting the city in a soft, golden haze. "Tomorrow, we begin your real training," he said. "Not just to survive, but to understand who you truly are." Isolde felt a thrill of anticipation. For the first time in her life, she was not defined by what others thought of her. She was being given a chance to grow, to become more than her past, more than her fears, more than the market that had tried to sell her as worthless. But even as she closed her eyes, the wind whispered through the mansion, carrying a faint, cold warning. "Someone is watching. Someone will not wait for you to be ready." And far below, in the shadows of the city, a figure moved silently through the fog. Watching. Waiting. A voice whispered to itself, barely audible. "She is the key, and soon she will awaken." The first light of dawn filtered through the mansion's tall windows, brushing across Isolde's face as she stirred from a restless sleep. Her dreams had been filled with shadows and whispers, visions of the city, and the soft, steady presence of Kale. She felt different now, not just because of the mansion or the safety it promised, but because a strange, flickering power had begun to awaken within her. Kale found her in the library, standing before a wall of ancient tomes, her fingers brushing over the spines. His expression was unreadable, as if he carried both pride and concern in equal measure. "Good morning," he said softly, not startling her. "Good morning," Isolde replied, glancing at him with a mixture of hesitation and anticipation. I think I'm ready to learn more today." Kale nodded. Then we begin. Not just with strength or skill, but with understanding. He gestured toward a large, open space at the center of the room. Strange symbols were etched into the floor, glowing faintly in the dim morning light. Today, you learn to sense the world around you, to feel the energy that binds it. This is the first step in controlling what is within you. Isolde stepped forward cautiously. The symbols pulsed beneath her feet, sending shivers up her spine. Kale's presence was steady beside her, a calm anchor in the unfamiliar magic that hummed in the air. "You are stronger than you believe," he said. "Do not be afraid to trust yourself. Your size, your strength, your very being, it is all part of the power you will learn to wield." Isolde closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The hum beneath her feet grew stronger as she focused, reaching inward. At first, nothing happened. Then a warmth spread through her chest, gentle and steady, like a spark turning into a small flame. She felt her heartbeat synchronize with the pulse beneath the floor, and suddenly, the room seemed to shift. The shadows on the walls moved as though alive, and she could sense the faint stirrings of magic in the air. Kale watched silently, his eyes narrow but intense. "Good," he said quietly. "You are beginning to see. The world is not empty. It moves, it reacts, it listens. And so do you." For hours they practiced together. Kale guided her hand as she traced symbols in the air, teaching her to draw energy from the world around her. She stumbled often, frustrated by her own mistakes, but he never scolded her. Instead, he encouraged, guided, and pushed her just enough to test her limits without breaking her. During a short break, they sat by a window overlooking the fog-covered city below. The streets were quiet, but Isolde knew danger could lurk anywhere. She glanced at Kale, wondering how he could move so confidently through a world that seemed intent on harming them both. "Kale, do you ever fear?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked at her, eyes reflecting both the sunlight and a depth she could not fully understand. "Fear is necessary. It teaches you where your limits are, but you must not let it control you. You must use it to sharpen yourself, not paralyze yourself." Isolde nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that, for the first time, she was not completely powerless. The market, the cages, the jeers, all of it had tried to define her. But here, with Kale, she was learning that she could shape her own strength, that she could fight, survive, and even thrive. Their training was interrupted by a sudden noise, a crash from the courtyard below. Isolde's heart leapt and she instinctively reached for Kale, who moved like shadow and light combined, silently to the window. "Someone approaches," he murmured. "Not ordinary humans, something else." Isolde followed his gaze. Through the fog, she could see figures moving, tall, cloaked shapes that carried an air of menace. Her chest tightened. She wanted to run, to hide, but Kale's steady presence reminded her that she did not have to face danger alone. "They are here for you," Kale said quietly, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "And soon you will understand why you are not like the others. But you must stay calm, Isolde. Fear will blind you to what is real." The figures moved closer, and Isolde felt the hum within her chest grow stronger. The energy she had felt during training was no longer gentle. It thrummed like a drumbeat in her veins, responding to the danger outside. She clenched her fists, feeling her strength in a way she never had before. "Watch carefully," Kale instructed. "Do not act yet. Observe. Learn their weaknesses." From her vantage point, Isolde could see the shadows moving, their forms flickering like dark flames. She noticed subtle patterns, the way they stepped, the way their eyes glimmered under the fog. Slowly, she realized she could sense them, feel their intentions, even before they acted. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with clarity. The training, the strange exercises, and Kale's guidance had prepared her in ways she had not yet understood. She could feel the energy shift in response to her focus, and for the first time, she understood the promise Kale had made, that she was more than what the world thought. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now," he whispered, "control your power but do not hesitate. You are ready." Isolde closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reached outward with her newfound awareness. She felt the energy of the courtyard, the tension of the approaching figures, and the subtle patterns of their movements. When she opened her eyes, the figures stopped, uncertain, as if something unseen had slowed their advance. "Good," Kale murmured. "Now focus. Let your strength guide you, but do not let it consume you." With a gentle motion, Isolde directed the energy she had been cultivating. The fog swirled around the courtyard, rising like living smoke, confusing and disorienting the intruders. They hesitated, unsure which way to move, their advance faltering. Kale moved beside her, his own power quiet but immense. Together, they pushed the intruders back, not with brute force but with control and precision. Isolde felt exhilaration and fear, power and humility all at once. When the danger passed, the courtyard was empty. The fog began to settle, and the first hints of sunlight touched the mansion's towers. Isolde's chest heaved, her body trembling with adrenaline. She had faced danger and survived, not just physically but with control, with purpose. Kale's eyes met hers. "You did well," he said, his voice soft, almost approving. "You are learning faster than I expected." Isolde felt a swell of pride but also a new weight. The intruders were gone, but she knew they would return, or others like them. The world outside was still dangerous, still cruel. But now she had a sense of her own strength, her own power, and for the first time she felt that she could face it. As evening fell, Kale led her to a balcony overlooking the city once more. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing rooftops and streets bathed in soft gold light. "Isolde," Kale said, his tone different now, gentle, almost intimate. "You are not just learning to survive. You are learning to command the world around you, and with that comes responsibility and danger. You must never forget either." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I understand." "I hope you do," Kale said, his gaze softened. "Because the world will challenge you, and you will be tested in ways you cannot yet imagine. But you are not alone, not while I am here." Isolde felt warmth in her chest, a strange comfort that eased the lingering fear. For the first time she felt as though she belonged somewhere, not the market, not her old home, but here in the mansion with Kale. The night deepened, and the mansion grew quiet. But as she prepared to rest, she could not shake a faint sense of unease. The energy she had felt during the encounter in the courtyard had not disappeared. It lingered, faint and insistent, as if warning her that the threats outside were only beginning. And far below, in the fog-shrouded city, a figure moved silently along the rooftops. Eyes glinting in the dim light, it paused as if sensing something extraordinary. "The girl awakens," the figure whispered to the wind. "Soon she will be more than any of them expect." Isolde lay in bed, the pendant around her neck warm against her skin. She thought of the city, of the intruders, of Kale, and of the strange, humming power that now pulsed within her. For the first time she did not feel small. She did not feel worthless. She felt alive. The wind whispered through the mansion, carrying faint echoes of movement, of whispers, of shadows shifting in the distance. And though she did not know it yet, her life was changing faster than she could imagine. The power inside her was stirring, and the world outside was beginning to notice. The mansion was quiet, but the air thrummed with tension. Isolde stood by the balcony, watching the city below. The fog had returned, curling through the streets like living fingers. She could feel it pressing against her, testing her, reminding her that the world outside had not forgotten her. Kale appeared beside her, silent as a shadow. "They are coming," he said softly, his gaze sharp. "The one who watches from the shadows, he knows your power is awakening. He will not wait, and neither should we." Isolde's chest tightened, but she did not step back. The lessons, the training, the strange warmth that had grown inside her, all of it had led to this. She was ready in a way she had never been in her entire life. "Then we stop him," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. Kale's expression softened just slightly. "Yes, but remember, victory is not just in strength." It is in control, in wisdom, in knowing when to act. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the city plunged into twilight. Shadows stretched across rooftops, and a chill wind whispered through the streets. Isolde could sense the energy in the city, the stirrings of those who hunted her, the pulse of life and fear interwoven. She felt it respond to her own power, growing with every heartbeat. Kale led her to the courtyard. Symbols etched into the stone glowed faintly, the same as before, but now more intricate, more alive. "You are ready," he said. "Tonight you will see what you are capable of." The first attack came suddenly. From the mist, dark figures emerged, moving with unnatural speed. Their eyes glimmered with malice, and their intent was clear: to capture or destroy. Isolde's pulse quickened, but she did not hesitate. She focused on the energy within her, letting it flow outward. The pendant around her neck glowed faintly, harmonizing with the symbols on the courtyard floor. Shadows twisted and swirled in response, forming barriers, confusing the attackers, slowing their advance. Kale moved beside her, graceful and precise, his own power intertwining with hers. Together, they were a force of balance and control, not raw fury. The attackers faltered, their confidence shaken. "You are stronger than I imagined," Kale said quietly, just above the hum of energy around them. Isolde smiled faintly, feeling a surge of courage. "I told you I could do more than try," she replied, her voice firm. Hours seemed to pass in a blur. Every movement, every motion of energy, every careful step mattered. Isolde discovered new aspects of her abilities. She could sense intentions before they became actions, anticipate movements, and manipulate the energy around her to defend and protect. The intruders were skilled, but she was faster, smarter, stronger in ways they had not anticipated. Finally, the courtyard fell silent. The attackers had retreated into the fog, leaving faint traces of their presence behind. Isolde's chest heaved, exhaustion and exhilaration battling within her. She had faced true danger and emerged not just alive, but victorious. Kale approached, his dark eyes studying her with a mixture of pride and something softer, something that made her heart flutter. "You did well," he said, his voice low. "You are more than the world ever allowed you to be, and you are only beginning to understand what that means." Isolde looked at him, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. I think I'm starting to see it," she said. "I think I'm finally someone." Kale's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You are, and you always were. It just took the world far too long to notice." They stood together, the city below bathed in moonlight, their hands brushing briefly, a connection forming that neither could deny. It was quiet, tender and fleeting, yet it carried the weight of unspoken trust and admiration. The night was not over. A deeper threat lingered, one that Isolde could sense even if she could not fully understand. From the shadows beyond the city, a figure watched, cloaked in darkness, his presence like a cold void. The one who had whispered about the prophecy, who had predicted her awakening, was near. Isolde felt a flicker of fear, but it was different now. It was not the helpless fear of the marketplace or the uncertainty of the mansion's first nights. This was sharp, focused, tempered by her own power and by Kale's guidance. She could face it, and she would. Kale turned to her, his voice firm. "Remember what you've learned. Power is nothing without control. Courage is nothing without wisdom. You have both." The figure emerged from the fog. He was tall, his cloak flowing like liquid shadow. His eyes gleamed with malice, but he paused as he saw Isolde, the glow of her pendant and the pulse of her energy. "So the girl awakens," he said, his voice a hiss. "And the rumors were true. The key is alive." Isolde felt her pulse quicken, but she did not retreat. Instead, she stepped forward, her pendant glowing brighter, her energy thrumming like a living drum. "I am not a key," she said, her voice clear. "I am myself. And I will not be controlled by fear or prophecy." The figure's expression flickered, and for a moment he seemed uncertain. He moved forward, a wave of energy emanating from him, but Isolde met it with focus, channeling her strength, her courage, her will. The courtyard became a dance of light and shadow, energy colliding and swirling around them. Kale fought beside her, but he allowed her to take the lead. He had trained her, guided her, but this was her moment. Every lesson, every trial, every fear she had faced had prepared her for this confrontation. Time seemed to stretch. The figure attacked again and again, but Isolde's control only grew. She could sense his movements before he made them, anticipate his strikes, and counter with precision. The pendant pulsed, responding to her focus, amplifying her abilities in harmony with the symbols on the courtyard floor. Finally, with a final surge of energy, Isolde directed a wave of light and warmth, not to harm but to disarm. The figure faltered, his power disrupted, his intentions laid bare. He recoiled, uncertainty in his eyes. For the first time, he did not strike immediately. "You are strong," he admitted, his voice low. "Stronger than I expected, but this is not over." Isolde stood tall, chest heaving, energy still thrumming around her. "Maybe not," she said, "but I am no longer afraid, and I am not alone." Kale stepped beside her, his hand brushing against hers, a silent promise of support and partnership. "You have proven yourself tonight," he said. "Not just to me, not just to them, but to yourself. You are more than what the world thought. You are worthy. You are powerful. And you are free." Isolde felt a tear slip down her cheek, not from fear, but from release, from understanding, from the realization that she had overcome more than just enemies. She had overcome doubt, shame, and years of being told she was less than she was. The city below seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, the fog curling around the streets like protective arms. The danger was not gone forever, she knew that, but she had faced it, controlled it, and emerged stronger. Kale looked at her, his eyes reflecting both pride and something deeper, something tender and unspoken. "Come," he said softly, "rest now. You have earned it." Isolde followed him inside, the mansion welcoming her like a sanctuary. She felt the weight of the past lift, replaced with the promise of the future, a future she could shape, a future where she was no longer invisible, no longer defined by others, no longer sold like property. That night as she lay in bed, the pendant warm against her chest, she thought of the journey she had taken, from the market to the mansion, from fear to courage, from doubt to power. She realized she had been given a gift, not just of safety but of self-discovery, of understanding her true value. Kale watched from the shadows, silent and vigilant. He had seen many rise and fall, many claim power and lose it, but Isolde, she was different. She had embraced her strength, her uniqueness, her courage. And in that, he saw not just a pupil, but an equal, a companion, a partner. The moon rose high, casting its silver glow across the city. Isolde slept peacefully, the hum of energy within her steady, her dreams no longer haunted by shadows or whispers. She had claimed her place in the world. She had faced fear, danger, and doubt, and she had emerged transformed. Outside the mansion, the wind whispered through the fog, carrying faint echoes of movement, of distant threats, of watchers still in the shadows. But for now, Isolde was ready. She was strong, she was powerful, and she was free. And somewhere in the mist, a voice whispered faintly, almost in awe, "She is the one."